been notified in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. The Commission acts in review and recommending capacity for designations and removals of historic properties and districts. The Commission also reviews proposed National Register of Historic Places nomination. The Commission has final decision-making authority on certificates of historic appropriateness. My name is Jason Crowley. I'm the chair of this commission. And to my left, I have John Wright, Margie Longshore, and Donna Gardner. And to my right, I have Pat Jones, Tisha Smalls-Brown, and Melanie Millar. Seated at the desk facing the dais, we have Commission Attorney Mark Bell and Joel Evans, Director of Zoning and Planning. And Joel, if you'd like to introduce the rest of your staff.
Sure. Over to my right, Nikki Gremble, who will be presenting the cases today. To my right, Andrew Melisick, Deputy Director, and Adam Stein. And also in the audience, Sally Brooks is here.
Great. Thank you very much. I'd like to remind you that in order to get a good recording of the meeting for the minutes, please speak loudly and clearly into your microphones. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the November 16th, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion and a second for the minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Mr. Wright.
Second.
Mr. Wright makes a motion. Ms. Jones makes a second. Is there any discussion about the minutes? All those in favor for the approval of the minutes say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, the ayes have it. The next agenda item is HIST 11-21-00042, a request for a certificate of historic appropriateness. And Nikki, when you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Alrighty. Like Jason said, this is a request to designate, I'm sorry, wrong page. This is a certificate of historic appropriateness request to subdivide TMS number 583-0000243, which is a 1.56 acre parcel into two lots, equating to 1.070 acres and 0.491 acres. And then also to place a new mobile home on the new 0.5491 acre lot. And this parcel is located within the Phillips Community Historic District. And this is the application history. This is the location of the site when you're looking at the county as a whole. And then this is the location of the parcel within the Phillips Community Historic District. Phillips Community Historic District, their historic significance. They were approved in 2021 as a historic district on the Charleston County Historic Designation List, and currently has an application under review to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Originally, Phillips Plantation was subdivided in 1875 into 25 lots, ranging from 8.5 acres to 25 acres, and sold to formerly enslaved individuals, 2 of which were female. This is an example of community planning as a Reconstruction-era South Carolina Land Commission platted community where former plantation land was subdivided and sold to black and white landless farmers and tradesmen. Most parcels are narrow and rectangular in shape and oriented to the roadway, while the larger parcels were located around the perimeter of the platted boundary and along the waterway. Most properties within the district contain the original homes, and if they have been subdivided, they have been granted to heirs of the original landowners. Most land is still held by the descendants of the original landholders, and there were several significant figures in history associated with this community. This is an image of the proposed subdivision, showing the red line is where the new lot line is proposed to be located. The larger portion towards the south is where the existing home is located, and the rectangular portion at the top is where the new mobile home is proposed to be placed. Here's just a different aerial image of the lot. It is currently zoned Special Management Area 3, which is also called S3, and contains a single-family residence. Surrounding properties are also zoned S3 and are either vacant, contain single-family homes, or mobile homes. And it also adjoins to the town of Mount Pleasant and the Park West subdivision to the north and east. These are the approval criteria that the applicant provided. Staff found that the approval criteria had been met and recommends approval. These are the notifications that we sent out regarding this request. And we have received one letter of support from the Phillips Community Association regarding this request.
Thank you very much. Before we move to public comment, are there any questions for staff from the commission? All right. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in support of this request? If so, please approach the microphone right here in the center and begin by giving your name and address for the record.
My name is Albert Kohler, Kohler, 1578 Joe Rouse Road, and I'm in support.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in support of this request?
Good evening. How y'all doing today? My name is Richard Habersham, President of the Phillips Community Association. And we feel that this project is what the Phillips community wants. You know, it's a family-oriented property. There's splitting. It's for this young man to come back home to be with his family. So we support this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in support of this application?
I am Joseph Glover, the owner of said property. I support me.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who wishes to speak in support? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, we will close out the public comment portion. And again, before we go on to discussion with the motion and a second, is there any remaining questions from commission? Yes, Ms. Millar.
I have a question. Will there be subdivided any further, this lot, after you put this, if this approved, or any more plans to subdivide this?
I do have kids as of right now. It's up in the air.
Okay, so possibly?
Yeah.
Family?
Yeah.
Okay. There's no limits on how many property, I mean, how
Um,
many structures can be on this property?
On the other side of the house, there's some other places.
Okay, I mean, just on that.
It'll be up to the kids from this point.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Joel, is there, under this existing zoning, in addition to the historic district requirements for the zoning, what does this area allow for subdivisions?
It's allowed up to 3 dwelling units per acre.
Great. Thank you
So
very much.
whatever that equates to with whatever's left over, we'd have to look to see if it could be further subdivided.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions? All right, can I, yes, before we get to comments, can we have a motion and a second?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, I'll give that to Mr. Wright for a motion to approve and Ms. Jones as a second. Mr. Wright, your comments?
Yeah, Mr. Glover, I want to thank you and Richard and the Phillip community. This is exactly what I think we need. We need more of in Mount Pleasant, simply because it's affordable housing, and not only is it affordable housing, but it's exactly what this commission kind of was tasked to do when it created that historic opportunity for your community. It also gave you leverage to allow for this to happen and for you guys to be in approval of it. So this is exactly what I hope to see more of in Mount Pleasant. So thank you, Mr. Glover, and the Phillip community for this amazing opportunity to have affordable housing and to bring folks back home.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Any other discussion? All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve this subdivision. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. All right, the ayes have it. This is the final decision of the Historic Preservation Commission. If any person with a substantial interest in a decision of the Historic Preservation Commission chooses to appeal this decision, they may do so to the Circuit Court of Charleston County. Such appeal shall be filed within 30 calendar days after today's date. Thank you very much for coming. The next agenda item is HIST 11-21-00041, a request to designate the B Fields community. Nikki, when you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Sure. This is, like Jason said, a request to designate the Beefield community as a historic district on the Charleston County Historic Designation List. This community contains 61 parcels and 64.96 acres, located in the James Island area around the Follow Road and Battery Island Road vicinity. This is the location of the proposed district when looking at the county as a whole. This map includes the parcels that would be included in the proposed historic district boundary. The property shown in pink with the hatching signifies parcels that are also located within the Folly Road Corridor Overlay Zoning District. Properties that are just white with hatching are unincorporated Charleston County, and the gray properties are City of Charleston or City of Folly Beach. These are the zoning and future land use maps of the proposed district. The current zoning is Special Management 3, S3, and the area primarily contains single-family residences, mobile homes, and undeveloped land. A portion of the proposed district, like I said, is within the Folly Road Corridor Overlay, and those zoning designations are neighborhood commercial, which contain single-family homes, restaurants, and a social club. Parcels adjacent to and immediately surrounding the district, but are within the City of Charleston jurisdiction, are zoned either rural residential, RR1, single-family residential, SR1, diverse residential, DR3, limited business, LB, or are within the city's Folly Road Overlay Zone, which mimics the Charleston County Overlay Zoning District. This is just another aerial view showing the proposed boundary in green. This is the historic significance of the proposed district provided by the applicant. The Beefield community is located on the southeast side of James Island and is included within a larger African-American settlement community known as Grimble Farm or Grimble Estate. The Grimble Farm community was identified in the 2016 Charleston County Cultural Resources Survey update as a remnant freedmen community. While National Register listing eligibility is still in need of additional research, this community is amongst many that contribute to the history of the Lowcountry. This area is a significant source of military history where two very important Civil War battles occurred, the 1862 Battle of Secessionville and the 1864 battle known as the Third Assault on James Island. Additionally, this community was the site of federal camps and artillery positions as Union troops were prepared to attack Fort Lamar at Secessionville, including the 54th and 55th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry Regiments and the 33rd Regiment of the United States Colored Troops. The area has been identified as a source of Civil War earthworks and extant archaeological sites that have not been studied to date as of yet. After the conclusion of the Civil War, 150 acres known as the B Tract, located south of the Grimble Estate and north of Saw Legree, were granted to Horace Rivers. In 1872, Sarah Rivers, his wife, sold part of the B Tract at public auction to several African-American families, including the Greens, Richardsons, Preludes, Hazards, Browns, Frasers, and the Bachmans. The land that was originally sold to these families has continued to be conveyed to family members up into present day. These maps were provided by the Battleground Preservation Trust when they did a survey of the area showing where the battleground study areas were identified. And these are some photos of the community, and this is along Arsburn Road looking under the beautiful oak trees. And this is where some of the battleground sites were. And this is a road, and I cannot remember what the name of the street was, but it was the road that connected Saw Legree and the Beefield community. For a district to be designated on the historic designation list, the applicant must show that they meet one of the 11 approval criteria. In the applicant's letter of intent, he stated that he met several of these. Number one, that it has significant inherent character, interest, history, or value as a part of the rural county or heritage of the county, state, or nation. Number two is of an event significant in history. Number four, exemplifies the cultural, political, economic, social, ethnic, or historic heritage of the county, state, or nation. Criteria 9, represents an established and familiar visual feature of the neighborhood or community. Item 10, has yielded or may be likely to yield information important in prehistory or history and deemed a potential archaeological site, and/or is deemed eligible for or already listed on the National Register of Historic Places. These are the applicant's responses. This area, or this map depicts the registered voters. So in order for a district to apply to be designated, there has to be 51% of the registered voters within the district boundaries and on Charleston County property that sign a petition in favor of the designation request. So this color scheme here on this map, there are 43 registered voters within this proposed district, 34 of which signed the petition, so that brought the percentage to 79% of the registered voters sign on behalf of this application. Of the 61 total parcels, 36 are vacant. They are shown here in tan. Therefore, there are no voters assigned to those lots. 25 are occupied. Parcels with houses but no registered voters are shown in light blue, so that accounts for 3 of these parcels. Non-residential lots, and therefore not having any voters assigned to it, are also shown in tan along Folly Road, and there are 4 of those. And then residential parcels with registered voters are 19. So I know it's hard to see the numbers here, but the green parcels show where the registered voters reside and are registered to vote at that particular address, and how many people sign on behalf out of the total number of voters assigned to that address. Because the applicant met at least one of the approval criteria, staff recommends approval of the request. Here are the notification requirements that we met. We have received some public input regarding this request. This is a similar map to what you just saw, but so they provided a signed petition that had 287 signatures. B-Field residents in support but not registered to vote, there were 3 of them. B-Field residents in the city of Charleston and supporters in direct vicinities. So those supporters would be folks that live directly adjacent to the proposed district, but they are not registered voters. That accounted for 12 individuals that signed on behalf. James Island residents that signed this petition, there were 122, and all other signers, so that would be anywhere else in Charleston County or across the United States, as I saw on the signature list. There were 150 of those signatures. Again, the darker green parcels show the folks that signed on behalf of the application, therefore they were included in the supporter count. We have also received a bit of opposition. Those parcels are shown in orange. They're the 2 rectangular orange parcels at the top of the page. We received 4 letters regarding those from the heirs of the James Prelude estate. And then the smaller orange parcel towards the middle of the district were from property owners of 1849 Hazard Lane that did not want to be included within the district. That's all I have for this. If it moves forward, it would be scheduled for the January 18th public hearing at council.
Thank you very much, Nikki. Before we move to public comment, are there any questions for staff from commission members? I have some questions. Nikki, In addition to what you presented, was there any information that was presented about the structures or the houses that would be included in this designation? I saw some stuff about the landscape and the roads and the historic battleground features, but nothing about the actual homes that would be under designation.
No, there was nothing included in the application regarding the actual structures within the district, just that they are currently and have been held within family ownership.
Okay. Ms.
Are
Millar?
the structures going to be relevant to the historic designation that they're trying to get, as far as, is that what the structures would be built for?
Right, so the structures, if included in the district, then they would be subject to the Certificate of Historic Appropriateness requirements later down the road. So anything that would require a zoning permit would have to go through this review process and would be looked at individually.
You mentioned, Nikki, you went through the different criterion that the applicant nominated this under. Can you go back to what the staff felt that the criteria were that they met?
Yeah, so the applicant noted several different criteria. Staff did not designate which one in particular that had been met. The only one that I feel confident that they did not meet was that they were deemed eligible for or already listed on the National Register. In the 2016 Historic Resources Survey update that we had done, this area was shown that it needed more history, so it needed some more documentation and more research. So it hadn't been determined if it was actually eligible yet or listed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to public comment. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in support of this nomination? If so, please approach the microphone in the center and begin with your name and address for the record.
I'm a little wobbly, sitting down across my leg. Well, my name is Reverend Paris Williams, 1833 South Grumble Road. And lot 105 or 106 don't want to be included into this B-field district.
So you're speaking in opposition to this?
Yeah, opposite.
Okay.
Not the whole thing now, just 2 lots.
Just 2 lots?
Yeah,
It's the two at the top, the orange rectangular lots.
105 and 106.
Great, thank you very much.
Are we at liberty to ask any questions on that specifically, what their reasoning, or is that, to be not included, or is it just a?
Mark, what would your recommendation be for back and forth between speakers?
And it's at your discretion, and if you'd like to entertain any comments with members from the public.
Okay, I'll allow it if you'd like to.
Respect the fact that you have opposition, so I'd like to know why, if you don't mind. Since there's so many people in favor.
One of the reasons is that we just don't want it. Number one, James Perlow, heirs from James Perlow, we bought that land in 1889, and we have our own community organization, the Grumble B Field, and I wasn't notified about it because if they had asked me from before, we would have told them no, because we have a conflict going on with those 2 particular properties.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Much.
And up, I want to go into more
I
detail.
I was just wanting to hear what you had to say and your opposition.
Okay.
Is there something else you'd like to share with us?
I have a question.
Mr. Wright?
How much acres we talking about in those 2 parcels?
You know the acreage of your parcel, sir?
Yeah. On the 105 is 2 point something acres, and then 106 is 2 point something acres. We just don't want it. That's all plain,
And that is Ayers property? Is
That's
that?
A property. We got more property surrounding that, you see? And if we included that, we could have a problem with the rest of the bigger portion of properties. You see?
And I guess, my other question I guess I would ask is there maybe which is, you're right, but is there some long-term potential for sale of that particular parcels, maybe?
No, in the future. Okay, I'm elected official for the town of Janesville for three terms, okay, for the last 10 years before the new town took over. And then James Perlo is want to develop our own area the way we want to do it. I got 5 great-grand, you see? So we have people in our family, all the James Perlo family, we done discussed what we want to do with the rest of our property. We've been subdividing this piece by piece for the last almost 30 or 40 years. But now we at a point now that we don't want a part of the Beefield Community District. I think that should be plain as, if you just want it, you know. We have the freedom for what we want, what I'll do with our land, because Jim Pearl bought that land over 100 acres in 1889, and then carry on until now. So it's time that we to speak out. And me and Dr. Moulton, he got 106, he's not here today, then me, Reverend Paris Williams, you know. And so we don't want it, and the rest of the family came to us and said, we don't want to be involved in it.
Great, thank you, sir.
God
Appreciate you.
bless you, okay?
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak about this application?
I would like to ask a question.
I mean, have him go first, and then you can approach the microphone.
Wilburn Gilliard, 1530 Battery Island Drive. First of all, I'm in favor of the request, but I have a question. The area that's considered the Beefield community is not all-inclusive on this map. And what I've noticed, the areas that part of the city, they're not included. Is there a particular reason for that?
Yes, sir. In South Carolina, we are a home rule state, which means that the most local form of government has the power of jurisdiction. And so this is Charleston County's Historic Preservation Commission, which means that we only have the power to review, nominate, and regulate properties that are within unincorporated Charleston County. The city of Charleston has its own jurisdiction and governmental powers, which means that they would have to do their own separate nomination and designation, of which we don't have any say over, and I don't know if the city of Charleston has the ability to even do that, but we can only look at the unincorporated properties, which is the reason why the incorporated in the city of Charleston properties are not included in this district.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Willie McElvain Williams, formerly Willie Green, from James Island. I don't live there now, but my question is, and I have no problem with them forming it into a historic district. That's not my problem.
Sure.
Only question is there a restriction if this were to happen with the land that we own there? Because I do have acreage there. I was raised up there, and my son will probably, he has the rights if he chooses to build a house there or whatever you want to do. Is there any restrictions? And I am in the unincorporated area. I'm not in the city.
Sure. So if you're in the boundary of this map,
Where the Grimble Plantation is back there. Hazard Lane runs through, is Hazard Lane and Osborne.
is that, Nikki, is that on?
So the boundary kind of stops here at the end of Arsburn where it makes that hard left turn to the cul-de-sac. Is your property within that
As
area?
Battery Island runs into Osborne.
Okay,
I'm down Osborne, and then there's a lane that leads from Osborne called Hazard Lane. They named that Hazard, runs all the way back to the Folly Road, where the Prelo place is.
Right.
So
So,
is there a restriction, is what I want to know, to any of that property?
so yeah, if you're in one of these white parcels that's right outside of the boundary, then it would depend on what sort of development you were looking to do. So if you were looking to, say, subdivide your property into two parcels, like the last case that we heard, that would come before this commission, and they would listen to a similar presentation about what the subdivision means to the district before you could obtain that plat approval. But if it's within the district, then you would have to get that
I'm
certificate
not
for
so sure if I'm in
everything.
the district now by what you're saying, because you don't seem to have information about Hazard. My address on the tax, I think, is Hazard, is Osborne, but there's a road run right across from my land that says Hazard.
Right, so if you see on this map, only a portion of Hazard is included, so that's why I haven't given you a definite yes or no. Let me go back and see if this other one is a little easier to see. So do you see where the hatching is, where Hazard Lane comes down into the pink area? And then where it ends at James Prelo Road?
Now, James Prelo Road, you would have passed where I live, where my property is. You would have
Okay,
passed
so you're
there.
further south.
Yeah, I'm more like back to Hazard Lane where it leads from Battery Island. I'm up in that area.
Okay, yeah, then,
Across from the Grimble Plantation. That's where I'm up back in there.
okay, then yes, you would likely be in the district.
Be in the district.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of restriction you say there would be on property?
So the restriction is that applications would need to come before this commission and be reviewed before you would be issued a zoning permit.
Okay, well, that's fine. I have no complaints.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in favor or opposition to this application?
Carol Jackson. I live on James Island at 1461 Patterson Avenue. I have the privilege of representing this part of James Island if they are a city jurisdiction property. So I appreciate that your authority is only for the unincorporated properties. I strongly support the creation of a historic district. As far as I know, the city of Charleston does not have that same kind of municipal designation. We can nominate and respect the nominations of individual properties, but we don't have whole districts yet. So maybe you can teach us something about that. I do think that my constituents and the citizens that I know were highly in support of creating a district that will continue to give this part of James Island the recognition that we all believe it has long earned and has really not had that kind of visibility. Just as an example, they had a Welcome to Beefield Community place name sign that literally was tucked so far back onto Battery Island Drive that nobody ever drove by it anymore because it was on Old Folly Road that comes to a screeching dead end right there at the causeway that used to be able to connect Solagree and that part of James Island. So we worked with the city and the state to move it to a much more visible area off of Folly Road so this neighborhood can have its name back as far as the public education is concerned. So thank you very much for hosting this, and I'm sure you're going to vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would wish to speak about this application?
Good afternoon. My name is George Richardson, and I reside at 1804 Battery Island Drive, and I am the president of the Battery Island Drive Neighborhood Association / Beefield community. I have no opposition with Reverend Williams opposing that because we'd already spoken. They're in a different association altogether, so I can understand and appreciate them opting not to be a part of our historical designation. The Beefield community at one point did include both sides of the Folly Road, but over the years, We divided. The other side went over in the city. They formed their own neighborhood association. So we went on with our very own. My concern is, and I'm the applicant, by the way, and my concern is that a lot of history has been lost. And it's been lost, and it's about to lose more due to future development that's already in progress right now as I speak. And for me to submit documentation about the placement of the families, I realize that our future generation won't have any history or knowledge at all if we don't preserve our historical history. Because I have, and I've spoken in city chambers last Tuesday, and then I said to them, my community is only like about 26 residential homes. I do know Ms. Willem May McElveen, McElveen. We grew up in the same neighborhood. I know exactly where she's talking about, and I know what her son is trying to do also. We don't want to hinder nothing of that sort. But I will say that 26 residential homes, that's a very small number. And as I stated before the city council in chambers on last Tuesday night, we are more or less the smallest community in Charleston. And I have 95-year-old resident still driving. 65%, 70% of them are in the mid-80s to late 80s. They want to see the history of their upbringing preserved. So therefore, as the president, it's my obligation and my responsibility to my community to see that that happens, and we have a say-so in any future development that may want to come in to our community. And so for that reason, I strongly support us being a historical district, and so does the elderly people that I represent. So that's my spill on it, and I don't have a problem with anybody that opposes for whatever their reasons are. We're just interested in preserving our part of the unincorporated areas. Thank you.
Mr. Richardson, may I ask a question just about the community itself?
I have a question.
I had asked my question to staff earlier about the homes that would be included in this because there wasn't any information, and I'm interested particularly in the corner where Battery Island Drive and Arsburn come together. I noticed that there's a lot of small lots, and then there are larger lots. Is this, when the Phillips community who had the application earlier, when they did their nomination, they had a very clear outline of the history of the properties and the evolution, the type of the properties, you know, a lot of trailers and an evolution of the settlement, or the heirs' families who intergenerationally add buildings as the families grow and shrink. Is that similar to what your community's makeup is? Can you describe a little bit about the difference of the large and small lots in here so we have a better understanding of this district and what it is that we would be regulating if we were to move forward today?
Well, first of all, what I can say about the large and smaller lots is that when these properties were being passed down, and I went all the way back to the end of the Civil War in my research, and I traced it all the way up to the present day. The larger lots were deeded to individual, and they were numerically designated like Lot 1. And that, in conjunction, brought them into ownership of some of the smaller lots, which are designated by alphabet. Let me make it more clear. The deed would say Lot 1 correlates with Lot B, those two go together, Lot 1 being the larger one, Lot B being the smaller. The smaller ones are located farther down Osborne around the Hazard Lane area, where if you were to walk Battery Island Drive up to where Osborne meets, you would then see Lot 2, and there would be a correlation of a smaller piece of plot that goes with that as Lot B, and so forth, Lot 3, Lot C. So what you see as small and large are more or less incorporated as one and the same. Sounds a little, complicated, but it really isn't when you look at it on paper. And I've done that quite a bit. And so we don't see smaller lots coming into conflict with the larger, because it's just a matter of working out heirs' property, and then the heirs deciding on how they want to implement that property. They want to, release and deed it to one individual or sell out their interest. However, that's a possibility. As far as homes and things like that, my address, I just recently had a home built for my mother back in 2009, and I had to go up 13 feet. And I had relatives that just a few houses over built around the same time, and they only had to go up 5 feet. So it's like where you're located at, because it's also considered a flood zone. So that has a lot to do with the type of structure that's going to be permitted to come in to the community as well.
If I may ask one other question, you had mentioned that you have information about the lot numbers. Is that a historic plat map that you have? Is there a way that we could have a copy of that to better understand?
Copy of that. Actually, I have more or less a copy of the original, which was handwritten, and all these things are down at the Records and Deeds office. I spent several hours down there on this past Friday doing research in preparation for this presentation and what I submitted to Nikki. So I'm sure anything that I've just talked about, I do have at my disposal and have no problem sharing that information along with you all.
I'd appreciate that. Mr. Wright?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, sir. Again, this Historic Preservations Commission was designed to do exactly what you're getting done here now. And I think ultimately the goal was always to hope that more communities would understand what Charleston County was doing in this creation.
Yes.
And would give consideration whether it was just 26 houses or individual property, as we voted on in the past as well. So I want to thank you for your community.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Richardson? Yes.
Question, I'm just making sure I'm clear on this. The large lots are not original in the fact that they're larger. The other smaller, they weren't subdivided, and that's why the size is now so much.
No, they're subdivided.
Were they all originally, big pieces like this? No?
No, it's just that when they were deeded, that's how they deeded it. They own property along Battery Island Drive, and they own property along Hazard Lane and Osborne. So what they did, my ancestors, what they did, the smaller and the larger, they deeded to one individual, and they just kept doing that with numerical to correlate along with an alphabet. You'd better see that when I produce and show you all the handwritten deed that supports what I'm saying.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
I have one final point I'd like to make. Ms. Jackson, I wanted to tell you thank you for your work that you've done. I'm also James Island high school teacher, just recently retired. And I can honestly say that all the students that I've taught, Prelos, Backmans, and lots of these names that you're saying here, these children know a lot about Mosquito Beach, and they know a lot about Coffin Island, they know a lot about Folly Beach, but they don't know about the Beefield community. And this is, to me, as a history teacher, this is really important. So I understand, sir, you're right to make a choice, But I hope that if you were to come here again and want to subdivide your property, that we would have the opportunity to be also very fair with you in your, your choice. So I just want to thank you, though.
Just one other thing in closing. I want to recognize Councilwoman Carol Jackson. Even though she jurisdicted the city part of my community, she didn't allow that to hinder her from helping the entire community. She worked very tirelessly along with the city as well as the county jurisdiction in my neighborhood. And I told her in city chambers on last Tuesday night that she's going to be missed as she leaves office because she really was very instrumental in helping us, even to this point today, which shows me what true leadership is all about.
Thanks, sir.
And she will be missed by my community.
I have a feeling Ms. Jackson's not through yet.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on behalf of this nomination?
My name is Kelly Vicario, 147 King Street. The Preservation Society supports the local designation process to establish important protections for historic places in Charleston County. And we are intrigued by this proposal to create a new historic district on James Island. The history submitted on the battlefield is very compelling. And we'd like to learn more on how it intersects and layers on with the history of the Beefield community. To Ms. Miller's point, we agree that the history is significantly important and significantly undertold as well. As this request progresses, we do see the opportunity for additional research on the settlement community to substantiate the basis for the historic district and the definition of its boundaries. Overall, we are supportive of this request and encourage further documentation on the area's history to support the historic district designation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cashin Drole with Historic Charleston Foundation. I applaud the residents of the Beefield community for their work to preserve their community for future generations through designation as a Charleston County Historic District. And on behalf of Historic Charleston, I'm proud to support their application. Charleston County's historic African American settlement communities are really unique and valuable historic and cultural resources, significant for their landscape patterns, for their social values, and connection to traditional Gullah cultural practices. And the work to recognize and document and preserve settlement communities has really only recently begun in earnest. The 2016 County Historic Resources Survey really has been the catalyst and made a lot of this preservation work possible. And I think designation of Beefield is really will further those preservation goals. It has been a great privilege of mine to work with my friends in the Phillips community, to work with friends in Salagree and Mosquito Beach on historic documentation and historic designation of those communities. And they are really great examples of what is possible for sharing and celebrating these wonderful communities that play really a significant role in the complex history of the Lowcountry. I believe that the Beefield application meets at least 5 of the criteria in the county's historic preservation ordinance. So that meets and exceeds what's required, and I'd urge you to give thoughtful consideration to the application and advance it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this application?
Hi, I'm Crystal Adams Hudson, and I own 1735 James Prelude. And I'm neither accepting or opposing this, but I do have a question. I'm in the very beginning stages of building a single family residence, and I didn't know if there's going to be certain stipulations on what type of home or structure can be built if this was accepted, or if we know that yet. So that's the.
So is your property within the boundaries of?
Yes.
It is, okay. Would you, Nikki,
So this still has to go through the council process. So the schedule as it is right now has this being adopted March 1st, I believe. So anything that's permitted or submitted prior to that date would not be reviewed by this commission. But any applications that are submitted after it's formally approved would be reviewed.
Okay, all right, thank you.
thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak about this application today? All right, I'm going to then go ahead and close out the public comment portion. Before we move to discussion, are there any final questions from commissioners to staff? Yes, ma'am.
I do have a question, just for clarification. If we do move ahead with approval for this, are we allowed to not include the properties that have requested to not be included?
That's a great question. Joel or Mark, could you answer that for us?
Actually, I believe the ordinance says, Ms. Longshore, that the board has the authority to approve or deny, and not to modify the application as it goes forward.
A follow-up question from that. If we were to recommend deferral in order for the applicant to provide the additional historic materials that were mentioned today and clarify the boundaries, what would the earliest period be that they could come back to this body for consideration?
Well, the earliest is the next meeting, but I think that to get the type of information in the format that was discussed today, I think we would be looking at the February or March meeting.
And since we are just a recommending body, if it moves forward today as presented, it goes before public hearing, before council, and then 3 readings. Does council have the ability to amend a boundary after it comes out of our body?
Mr. Chairman, and as my understanding of the ordinance is that any recommendation you guys make will be approved as it is given to council. However, I cannot speak to what council will ultimately do once it's before them.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Wright?
Well, I guess it's a very important question, because can they do the modification? I mean, regardless of what we recommend.
Mr. Wright, unfortunately for you, I really cannot speak for what council will ultimately do. The ordinance says that districts should be approved or denied as they are presented. But like I said, I just am not in a position to speak to what council will do. It is their discretion to do with their ordinances as they desire.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Is there a motion to open up discussion in a second?
I move to defer to next month meeting and get the necessary documents if we can, and we look at this again next month, because if there's still something out there and there's still some questions and concerns, I think we should get those answered first.
Mr. Wright, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I think that next month might be a little soon with our holidays and the deadline for the application.
That's fine.
I think the February or March would be the earliest.
I support that.
Yeah,
I totally support
I think that, I think everyone wants an application that is, addresses everyone's concerns.
Absolutely.
And we want to give the applicant the opportunity to do that.
I support a February or March. If that's my recommendation.
I second that motion with the amendment.
So we have a motion from Mr. Wright and a second from Ms. Jones to defer up to the March meeting in order for the applicant to discuss the final boundaries and provide additional materials. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I guess, as we indicated here, we're uncertain what council could and would do. I don't know if we're able to clarify that, and if that's all possible. We can't say what they will do, but we want to know, would they be able to make an amendment?
Right, and I think in either case, the best remedy for concerns along that is to make a recommendation to council of an application that is as complete and as clear and has as much support with boundary issues and people that want to be in and out, to have all those things addressed, to narrow that that concern to council so that they're not put in that position as well.
Okay.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
One final question, thought. Is there any time frame that's going to will this create a problem with any of the process of the designation? I mean, just putting it back a couple months, as far as people that are in favor of this, would this limit anything in happening in the next couple months? I mean, I know it has to go through Charleston, the actual process of the county as well, correct? They have to vote this as well, so it's going to be a while, am I not correct, before it's approved? After our recommendation, it goes several other places. I'm not, I guess I'm looking at you, Joel, but I'm just curious. I mean, I know it's a process, and I just didn't want I didn't know if they had something specific that was going to need to happen on a time frame for the designation, if this would cause a problem for them if it's being pushed back.
I mean, if it was addressed, I'm not aware of any.
That to you, Joel.
Yeah, okay, sorry. I'm not aware of anything in Charleston County that is right now that would be impacted by this within the next couple months or not. But,
Okay. I just didn't know if they were having something that they were trying to get accomplished that would cause a problem for it to be pushed back as far as a date, the actual designation group. I'm not sure. Okay. Thank you.
Ask that question to the applicant.
Yeah, I'd like to address that. Certainly.
I just didn't know if there was a time.
With respect to what you all are proposing here, I'm opposing that because to be pushing us back, we've already heard that the earliest right now from where we are today to even achieve the designation is in March. I already know that there are lots that's on the market to be sold that's going to interrupt our historical designation. As a matter of fact, I'm right now in communication with one real estate agency that has 2 lots up for sale in our historical designated area. And I'm trying to bring him on board along with the Greenbelt program so that we can try to curb unwanted things that's going to interrupt our history. I think what's happening here is something small is being blown up to be much more than it is. We have a gentleman from a different association that opposes simply because they're in a different association. Where's the problem?
That was my question, sir. That's why I'm asking you that. I felt like there probably was a time frame involved here.
Yes, definitely.
I agree.
So I'm not comfortable with.
No.
I'm totally opposed to this.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion and a second on the floor, and we're in discussion. Sir? Yes, sir.
Young man, for his information there, we should wait for this 2 months because over 100 years, James Pearl land. 100 years. And the town of James Island, and I become a town councilman in 2000 to 2010. It took 100 years just to get a road to that property. You see? So I don't know nothing about all this here going on. Nothing. Until I got a letter a week ago. And what I did, I hired an attorney to investigate this. So like I'm saying, I thank you for that, and I hope that we could delay this until we get more information. Sorry, cousin, whatever, brother. That's my point.
I have a question for Nikki, or maybe Joel. Refresh my memory, how did we handle it with the Phillips community? Because didn't we have some residents in that community that did not want to be a part of the historic designation?
Yes, there were letters submitted requesting to be out of the district, but your body voted unanimously to approve it as it was presented with the boundary that that they gave, because I don't know if the opposition met any criteria that you all had regarding being removed from the district boundary or not. So that recommendation was taken through the council process. So the same way that we present to you all what a staff recommendation would be, when we go to council, we present what the Historic Preservation Commission recommendation is. So in the Phillips case, it was approved as applied for.
Thank you.
So, question. I'd like to know what looking at the original plat would prove. What is the purpose of that?
I mean, from my perspective, I'm not sure what the boundaries are of this community that we're looking at. If it's the boundaries that are outlined today, then it's the boundaries that are outlined today. But we are a historic preservation commission. We are supposed to be looking at the historic resources on hand. And I'm not saying there are not historic resources or a cultural landscape or a historic community, but we have a person who is saying that their property is not associated with this community, which I can't make I personally, as a voting member, can't determine with the information that's been presented to us if that is true or not, because we haven't seen any historic documentation. And I mean, we are going to be providing a designation of a community that is going to be regulated by us, but there isn't any information that's been presented to us today, from my perspective, that even gives a good baseline understanding of the community. We've had some great testimony, and that's been helpful, but that wasn't provided to us, which makes it difficult, from my perspective, to understand this community at hand. Because if we designate this and and one of the people who is included, who is opposed to it, is able to argue that they shouldn't be included, does this open up other potential future nominations down the road of being able to whittle away because we don't have all the information when it's presented to us? That's where my concern is as I look at this today, and why I support the deferral.
Is there a possibility, Jason, that we make a recommendation based on a contingency? If you clearly know exactly what you're looking for in terms of those historical documents to know what's designated, is it possible that we can make a recommendation in the interest of time to say, we approve it with this limitation, but only contingent on these specific documents being there? Is that a possibility to do that?
So first, we will have to vote on the motion ahead of us, which is to defer for up to 90 days. But if that fails and we do another motion, as my understanding from the interpretation from Mark and Joel, we can't approve with conditions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So we will approve as presented or deny as presented today with the boundaries as
And
presented.
Commission, just to clarify, we don't have to wait till the 3 months. As soon as the applicant gets us what is requested, we will put it on the next available meeting. If the commission chooses to, whatever the deferral is, or not, yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, I want to see the best possible nomination move forward to completion, and I think that there is something here in this community worth protecting and worth preserving, and the community's comments today demonstrate that argument. I'm just not sure we have all the information to be able to have a record that is solid, to be able to argue that this property that the person is opposed to should be in or out. And if someone comes in for a certificate of historic appropriateness in the future, that we know how to give a good response to an approval or denial of that certificate of historic appropriateness without fully understanding the lots, the subdivision patterns. Phillips gave us a good description for us to be able to say today that that subdivision was appropriate because it was in the nomination. Are there any other comments?
Thank you for that clarification, Jason. Appreciate it.
So we have a motion and a second to defer up to 90 days in order to get further information and clarify the boundaries. I'm going to go for the vote. Yes, ma'am.
Just one thing, 90 days and instead of?
Up to. So that would mean that they would have to come back by March.
Okay, and just one other thing. I mean, and I hear what you're saying, Jason, but again, I'm going back to the Phillips community, Nikki, Joel. How much different, I mean, what are the big differences between the two cases?
I don't know that I'm at liberty to make that distinction.
I think the Phillips community worked on theirs for a couple of years. And they worked with the National Register folks. They had assistance from, and each application is unique. I'm not saying
Right.
but the Phillips community set a pretty high bar as far as having such a complete and thorough application that had the backing of all of the historic information that goes along with it.
Okay, and also with the lots, Mr. Williams, with the lots that are already up for sale, even if we defer this, I mean, will it prevent people from selling? I mean, they will still have the ability to sell, correct?
Ownership would have, we would not get involved with the ownership of property. It's
Right.
when an application is made for development is when this department would be involved with an application, so.
All right, thank you.
Transfer of property is not one of the things we get involved with.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right. If there's no further discussion, it's time for the vote. All those in favor of the motion to defer, say aye.
Aye.
All those who oppose the motion to defer, say nay.
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 Can you please, is that two? Yep. All right, we have, so that means that the ayes have it. So again, we hope that you are able to turn this around very fast to get this information to us, to be able to get on, if possible, to the January, but you do have until March to get the supporting material. And I do hope that this becomes a very successful nomination that goes all the way through in order to ensure that this community is properly preserved into the future. And in the meantime, this application is closed for now. The last item on the agenda is the chair remarks. I have no comments. Joel, as director, do you have any comments?
No.
Any closing remarks from anyone? Any final comments? All right. If there is no further business, this meeting of the Charleston County Historic Preservation Commission stands adjourned. The commission will hold its next regularly scheduled meeting on January 18th, 2022 in council chambers. If there are no applications at that time, we will be providing notification of the cancellation of this meeting. Thank you very much. one.